So good morning, everybody. I can see there are already a few of you that joined us. So thank you very much for being punctual. That's really appreciated. And we're going to just wait for a few more people to arrive. But it is certainly my intention to start promptly. So good morning, Elsa. Good morning, Emmanuel. Good morning, Monique. We will be starting shortly. Something you guys might like to do is just to test out the chat. I can see somebody's done that already, so that's good. Thank you, Elsa. I was actually just about to suggest that if people do test out the chat, because we will be using it a little bit later, and also if you haven't got pen and paper, now would be a good time to grab some, because I'm expecting you to start developing some tools that you can use on your own business to write winning bids as we go forward today. So my laptop's just clicked over to 11:02, so I'll give it another minute longer. When it clicks over to 11:03, we'll get going. And thank you, Monique. I've got your chat message. That's lovely. Okay, so let us begin. So first of all, a welcome to those of you that have come to this morning's webinar. Hopefully you know why you're here. I'm going to be describing sustainable tender business models to you. And I think that deserves a little bit of unpicking, because it's not about sustainability per se, but it is about ensuring that your business is sustainable, and you can prove when you respond to a tender that you have a good, sound business that is sustainable. So you'll learn some strategies, you'll learn about some innovative tools we have. And as you know, this programme has been put together by London Borough of Hounslow as part of their Innovate and Grow series. And I'm from Brandywin. I'm the person that will be delivering today. So a little about me. That's a recent picture. So as you can see, it's a reasonably close resemblance. In my previous life, I've worked at very senior level in some quite large organizations. So I know what organizations need to do to thrive and to survive. And, you know, taking business owners and the businesses from surviving on the edge to thriving, to living comfortably. And it's those insights that I want to share with you today, because the more purposeful you are, and the more that you feel you have good reasons for doing things, the more confidence you will have. So one of today's takeaways is going to be that you have, I hope, huge amounts of confidence. So yeah, you can read some other things about me there. I've worked in supply chains, and I've worked in a lot of small businesses, helping them to grow, helping them to survive and to thrive. So the agenda this morning is an introduction, some of which I've done, then take you forward to a framework of tools that we use. And what you will see is something that can fit on one sheet of A4 paper. When we go through the exercises today, I recommend that for each section we talk about, and it will become obvious as we go forwards, that you have an individual piece of paper. So the idea is that we will help you deliver or create something of a bespoke business model strategy today. And you will then be able to look back on it, reflect on it and say, not bad for a first one. And then afterwards, my hope is that you will want to book a one-to-one with either myself or my colleague Elsa, so that we can then hone in and make it real for you and for your business. And by going through today, you'll have a head start on other people, and you'll get so much more out of the one-to-one. And then summarize what we've done. And if you want to put questions into the chat, I'll answer those questions at the end. So this is it. This tool, this collection of boxes assembled together, is what we call a business model canvas. And it's important because it's templated. And as you probably know, when you fill in a template, you start somewhere, you use someone else's guidance who've thought this through, and then you get to the end and it looks good. It's powerful, it's graphical, it helps to give you clarity. And if we look at the way the form is designed, the customer focus, everything about the customer is on the right-hand side, everything about you and your business is on the left-hand side, and where they meet, this is the value proposition, which is about telling the customer what you can deliver, and you will have proved it to yourself that you can. So that's a really important piece. And when we ask you at the end to evaluate your business model, you'll have this form, this page, this series of pages that you filled in that describe all these things. And as we go through building it, I want you to think about 5, and that's not a typo, that's not a mistake, 5 lenses that I want you to look through. And none of them are really your own lens. You're looking at your business from a different perspective today. We want to be desirable to our customer. And if you think about anything you've bought, 2 things, minimum of 2 things need to happen. You need to have the right offer presented to you at the right time. So we have to be desirable to our customers, otherwise they don't buy. When we build what we've promised, so we win the deal, we win the order, we win the tender, we now have, if you like, a duty to deliver what we promised. For some things it's easy, for some things it's a lot more complex, but the process is always the same when you determine what's something going to cost and what resources do I need and how do I put this all together in a nice, easy, manageable way. That's all about feasibility. Then moving on, that's interesting. My cursor's got stuck. We need to be viable, financially viable. We've said we can do it. We have the right tools. We have the right people. We have the right materials. That's feasibility. But if we do not control our costs, so some of those are internal to us, salaries, heat, light, printing, communications, whatever it might be, but other things are less easy for us to control and we need to keep an eye on them. It might be electricity costs. It might be the costs that your supplier charges you for the things that you buy. So we need to have a really good handle on those, because as everyone knows, if your costs go up and you can't recover that increase in price, it makes it difficult to be a sustainable business. And that leads into adaptability. We need to be able to move. We need to maneuver. We need to second guess where our clients might be going, because a part of what we talk about today is customer relationships. So if we can build customer relationships, we can understand what they want next. We may be even to tell them about needs they don't know they have, but we can provide the solution to their needs and therefore the solution to their problems. So they want to buy from us. because we are solving their problems. We are making their life easier, cheaper, or quicker. And lastly, what's becoming a lot more common now, especially with tenders, is how are you going to help us save the planet? How can we show to people who are interested in us, so it could be the ratepayers, it could be whoever, that we buy from people who care? So you need to show that you do care, that you're doing your bit, and that you too would like to save the planet. And it used to be that people didn't worry about this too much, but I can tell you now, certainly in the last 6 months, as we've all been recovering from COVID, as we've all seen the horror stories on TV about floods, cyclones, massive fires, it's important that we do help the planet, and we do move forwards. And by completing the template, instead of just sort of having a gut feel, yes, I think I can win this job. Yes, I think I know what's involved. Yes, I think I can get a price that should work. You've done proper thinking. You've put it in all the boxes. It'll all add up, and you will then have evidence-based decision-making. You will know why you're charging how much money. You'll know where your tools and your people and everything you need comes from. And you will be able to talk with so much confidence, whether it's face-to-face, whether it's through a pen in your, or a keyboard with your tender response. You will be able to speak with confidence, and you'll be able to prove that your business is a sustainable one that will carry on. So here, this is a suggested order. It's not that important, but what is important is we start top right-hand corner. We need to know who we are trying to sell to, because at the end of the day, if you're writing a bid, you are responding to a person or something like that. So that's massively important. So we then build the value proposition for that customer. And again, we'll talk about all of these in more detail later. If we have a relationship with the customer, then when our tender goes in, it is likely to be received more favorably. And channels, well, normally that might be social media or other things. But again, we need to figure out, do we want to refer to other communication channels in our tender? Is that allowed? Can we do that? So that's an order that you might want to do things in, but don't worry, we'll cover it in a lot more detail in a moment. And let's look at an example of this. If you've heard of Uber, they've kind of kept, sorry, I beg your pardon. So we've covered desirability, feasibility, and viability, and we will come back to those. And an important thing today is it's not what you sell, it's what your customer buys. Think of a cafe. They sell beans, bread, if you're, eggs, whatever it might be. But what you go in to buy is a yummy breakfast. So what we need to talk about is, what is it the person we're talking to wants? And that's fundamentally important to what we do today. So if we look at Uber as their business model, how did they build their business model canvas? And they've broken the first rule, because you should only have one segment, one customer segment on the page. But to illustrate to you how they've done it, imagine the grey is on one page, the green is on a second page. So their customer segments, one is people who need to get somewhere. So big, broad segment, they're very lucky. And secondly, people who want to earn money driving. Some people enjoy driving. Some people think it's a great thing to do. You don't particularly need A-levels to do a driving job. So the value proposition for the riders, what is it we need to do to get the riders to do something unique to my webinars? There is a thing called the Charlie Squeak, and it goes something like this. Oh, good. And when you get your audience, even if it's one person in your segment, to say, oh, good, you've got into their heads. They are listening to you. You've got their attention and they like what you're offering. let's get as many of those funny squeaks as we can. So you see there, they offer a platform that will connect riders to drivers. Translated into English, it's an app, isn't it? It's an app on your phone. If you want an Uber, you click on it, you say, I'm here, where's my nearest car? They tell you it's the easiest way to do it. It's on your phone, click, 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 your Uber is ordered. Money goes out of the bank, no problem. Operates 24/7. You can choose the level of car that comes to collect you. So low cost to luxury, and in fact, lower cost than the traditional taxis that used to run around before Uber. And for the driver, a really simple proposition. You earn as little or as much money as you want, depending on you putting in as little or as much effort as you want. So if we move to the left-hand side now, customer relationships, yes. How do Uber build a relationship with you? They allow you, as the customer, to vote on the driver. Was he a good guy? Was he a less good guy? And actually nowadays, the drivers can also vote on passengers. And the channels, well, it's the app. A channel is how you communicate with your prospect so that you can turn them into a client, be they driver, be they a rider. So moving across to the left now, we can see in terms of partners, well, they need people who can handle payments. They need that app to work. They need the map technology to be provided by a third party. And to get this thing off the ground, they need people with deep pockets. So they need investors. So those are outside companies, partners that they will try to find, need to find in order for this to work. The key activities, it's what they do in order to provide the service. So they will maintain the platform, they will use it, they will run it, they will allow other people to run it. Clearly, they need to have a strong marketing campaign. They need to go through the motions of hiring drivers, checking driving licenses, whatever is appropriate to the in-country regulations. And they just need to keep all of this running. And the resources that are required to deliver are the platform, the employees who can do it, the driver network, and they need to have a strong brand that people can believe in. What does it cost them? Well, there's their own employees, there's the money they need to pay for the drivers, there's legal fees for documentation, possibly insurance, possibly other things, the marketing, the advertising, and the cost of running the platform that runs the app. So if you take all of those things to account, you know what you have to deliver, you know how you're going to deliver it, and you know what it costs. So you can then decide how much you're going to charge. So they can charge the customer per revenue, per mile, per kilometre, and driver can get paid in a similar manner. And they've also found a way that says if there's a busy event and vehicles are scarce, we can actually increase our pricing, and so the drivers get paid better. So that shows you at one level how this very simple tool can be used. So now I need you to grab a pen and paper. What we're going to do, I'm going to run you through a series of building blocks, the ones we've just looked at. I'm going to make some suggestions to you, and then I'm going to shut up. We'll have 2 minutes per slide, which should translate to 2 minutes per page in your book. And if we can do it in the order that I suggest, it's probably a good way. So let's get going. Customer segments. What is a customer segment? A customer segment is someone that you want to sell to. It can be a big group, but you need to be careful because you have to define your customer segment. And the more tightly you define the customer segment, the more successful you'll be. And actually, when you're answering a tender, this has been done for you. Your customer segment is the company that has sent you the document that you need to reply to. Within that company, there might be more than one person whose head you need to get inside. So there will clearly be the person who reads the tender document, and there will be the person who has an interest in this working well. So if we think of Hounslow Council as somebody that might be sending out tenders, There'll be a tendering guy who say, I need, I don't know, white lines painting in a car park. So his interest is the white lines get painted. At a higher level, somebody might say, well, make sure it's done right. If the bays are too small, we'll get endless complaints about people having their cars damaged in our car park. If they're too close to a pillar, same thing's going to happen. We don't want customer complaints. So there's somebody up top who has a vested interest in seeing a good tender. So the more easily you can put yourself into the shoes of the person who is going to see the tender, and if you can imagine him watching you as you write the answer, aim for one of those funny Charlie squeaks for everything you write down. And certainly for every different customer segment you have, you should write a new value proposition. It will be based around the core things that you do, but the difference between what you do and the benefits the customer gets is the difference between what you do and what goes in the value proposition. So it's a given. The council want your product. Well, we think they want your product because they've sent you the tender document. What is it they want? What is it you offer? Will they afford your pricing? Because if they put out what is considered a ridiculous tender document and you cannot do it for that price, stop. Don't waste any more time on it. You might be able to go back and say, are you sure that's the maximum amount payable under this tender? But if you can't do it, stop. Equally, if the people that have sent you the tender are not a customer segment that you want to deal with, stop. So this is part of the art of writing a winning bid. You don't waste time on ones that you cannot win. But once you've decided to go for it, think about the benefits. What is it I get? Yeah. So you've got the next part of questions. Who are you creating value for? And why would they be interested? If we think IT systems, I could say my offer is attractive because we have super duper servers in a very big server farm. No, that is not a benefit. That's a what that I do. The benefit would be because we have our server farms, our servers located in server farms in the cloud, it gives you guaranteed 24/7 availability, 365 days a year. So it's not what you do, it's the benefit for that person in that customer segment. So over to you. Who sent it? What do they want to hear? And what are they going to do? And I'll give you about a minute on this. And in this instance, feel free to make something up. It doesn't have to be Hounslow Council. It can be any target organisation that you would love to either receive a tender from or you'd like to put a bid into them to introduce yourself. So, okay. 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 Moving on. Value proposition. This is you talking about everything you do. And on your piece of paper, I hope it's A4. I hope it's got lots of lines on it because this is describing what you do in terms of benefits. And I was recently working with a care organisation that delivers care to the home for people that the council deem should be cared for. So I said, what's going to go in your value proposition? We are jolly good and we offer care in the community. Yeah, that is what you do, but no. Do you turn up on time? Yes, of course. Well, that's a value. That's something you do. That's something that the council would appreciate. You turn up on time. Do you have logoed uniforms with your name on so people know you're from the right company? So that when the person opens the door, they know they don't need to be scared. Well, yes, of course. That's part of what you do. It's a value. So this is going to be hard for people to write because you need to think about everything you do and say, well, is that a value? Is that good? And I'd suggest that most of the things you do will be good. And you might not even realize they are so part of your ingrained culture. It's what you do. Do your people have logos on the side of the cars? Yes. Do they have name badges? Yes. So again, if you translate that into a benefit, our people come in recognizable cars, wear recognizable uniforms, and have a name badge that they wear. So we can tell you the name of the person. Good. Charlie Squeak. So what goes into your valuation, your value proposition? What do you do well? Because remember, when it's a tender document, the only input they have is what they're reading. They won't look at your website. They won't do anything else. They won't talk to you. Over to you for a minute. And again, there's some target questions that might help you come up with answers. And this is something where if you book a one-to-one, you'll get a huge amount of help. So we've talked about customer desirability. We've talked about who our target customer is. And we have to be able to value what we do. We have to get paid. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. So think about what you're going to charge. Think about what can the market stand, because in some markets there is a price for things. And sometimes you can, by offering some spectacular additional value, charge more. But often the price is set. So make sure they're willing to pay for what you want to offer. And also have a look at this. Is it a one-off? Is it a one-off price? Or is it a recurring revenue? Is it like in the care home one? Obviously, that's month after month after month after month. So if it's a long-term contract, that might help you increase your value, do better deals with your suppliers. But we need to think about what we can charge and is it fair? How would the customer like to pay? Can you offer them a discount for multi-year renewals? Is that part of the tender? If you make it part of the tender by adding it to your response, would that help you get a tender for an extended period of time? And again, tenders have strict rules. If you don't answer the question or don't reply in the correct way, there's a good chance it'll count against you. So be careful, but be creative, be innovative in your answers. And also think about, if I did win this tender, how would it affect the overall balance of my business? Is it like putting all your eggs in one basket and everyone else has to suffer? What percentage of your business would it be? And how do you feel about that? Over to you for a minute. And interestingly, councils are now telling people that the lowest price doesn't always win, but you do have to show better value. Okay, channels. How do you communicate with the person that you want to buy? Well, the most obvious one is the tender. It's the tender response. So again, as I've said earlier, remember, there is a person who is going to read this. There is a person, and you want to get as many squeaks out of that person as you can. But for any other business, once you've got this value proposition written, it means you can sell to anybody. You have clarity about what you do. You have clarity about how you do it. You have clarity on how much it costs you. You can sell to anyone once you've been through this bid responding, bid writing process. So channels to market, you might have a sales force, you might have your own website, you might have retail premises, you know, it's a tender response. Obviously, some of these things are very costly if you own them all yourself, you know, especially things like a storefront and employing salespeople, if they're on anything other than a commission basis, can be very costly. So there are other ways, other channels. You can use distributors. So you sell your product into one place and they're responsible for your individual customers. Retail is a similar model, but you have to sell it into each individual outlet. And then there's franchising and licensing, and there's also e-stores kind of come into that, but depends how you warehouse your product. For software products and services, that's easier. So these are good, but they tend to be lower margin, which means lower profit in pound notes, but they are lower cost, and it means that you can get from being a smaller business to a bigger business much more quickly. So if you think about your channels, again, channels and relationships go hand in hand. Although the official response for a tender will, of course, be the response document, can you put things in front of them that they'll see? Can you get them to look at your Facebook page? Can you get them to look at your LinkedIn page? Can you like what they're doing so they take an interest in you? And then when they see your tender response, they might go, oh, yes, I've heard about that company. Yes, I've seen them on Facebook. Yes, I've seen them on LinkedIn. I like what they do. I like what I've seen. Because although officially that will not be part of the tender response, it's up here. And if you can get into the person's head, you stand a better chance. So channels, what do they cost? What do they deliver? And what's best for you? So have a think about that. Social media is often one of them. And remember, the tender is your channel. When your tender document is received at the other end, the person reading it has a job to do. He'll put you on the no pile if he doesn't like it. You know, he's got 20, 30 tender responses and he's like, no, boring, no, hasn't asked the question, hasn't answered the questions properly, no. So the job of your tender document is to go onto the maybe pile. They will talk to you some more. They will ask you some questions. They might invite you in. So the job of your tender document is to present yourself in the best way, indicating the most benefits that they can get because you've done a good job. We've talked about relationships. They are important. They're hard to build in a tender situation. But the more you can do it, the better your sales will be. The stronger your business will be, the more sustainable your business will be. And as you can see, there's lots and lots of ways to build customer relationships. And I think a lot here is talking about the relationships you might have with prospects, people who you want to buy from, or you want them to buy from you, I beg your pardon. But also think about the customers you already have. Think about how you retain them. Think about how you turn them into repeat business, because that's really, really important. The more you can turn a customer into repeat business, the better. And I'll give you an example. Car salesman. Somebody goes into the car salesman, they talk about the car they want. The chap says, so what are you looking for? And the person comes in and says, well, it's me. Yeah, husband or wife, 2 kids and a dog. What have you got? Takes them round, shows them all the lovely SUVs with a big tailgate. They choose one, lovely. That's the end of the sale. Customer's happy. Car salesman is happy. And most people would say, well, end of, job done, good. Everyone's left happy. But at that point, there isn't really a relationship. What about if the car salesman rang up and said, hi, Charlie, what's the car doing? You're going to get one of 2 responses. Either, oh, yes, it's fabulous, thank you, love it. And the person you're talking to has just remembered that car salesman. Wow, I wasn't expecting that. Almost a squeak, isn't it? Oh, good, blimey. Salesman rang me. Glad to hear it. Shall I set up the MOT for you in a year's time? Wow. He's going beyond, wow. Yes, please. I can forget about it then, can't I? Yeah, certainly, sir. So a relationship is starting. But even if the call goes the other way, hi, Charlie, how's the car? Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I loved that car, but my dog's too old. Back's too high, it can't get in. It can't. I have to pick it up and carry it. And sometimes it's wet and filthy and horrible. Oh. What if the car salesman said, Charlie, bring your car and the dog back. We'll swap it for one that works. Wow. So don't forget the telephone when you're thinking about customer relationships. Next page for you. What are you writing down? How do you contact your customers? How could you contact them? What benefit could you get them so that they have a strong relationship with you, so that next time a tender document comes out, you're top of the list to send it to. So if we go back to tenders, who is issuing it? What do they care about? How can you build a relationship? And if you've got a long-term target like Hounslow Council, you can do research and you can start getting closer to these people before the tenders are sent out. Likewise, if you've done work for other departments within the company, so within the council, other areas, don't forget to mention it. You know, we already do for you. You can talk to who knows how good we are. That's interesting. So the person who's receiving a will say, well, they work for us already. They must be good. They must meet our standards. Good. So relationships, massively important in this digital world. So now we're swapping sides. Now we're going to the left-hand side and we're looking at key activities. And this is about what do you do? So you might send people to premises. You might, what is it you do? What are your activities? Are they labor intensive? Are they electronical? What do you do when you create a product for somebody? How does it get delivered? What do you do? So how do you produce it? How do you distribute the product? How do you collect money for it? How do you do what you do? And that takes a bit of thinking about. And the question to ask, oh my goodness, if they said, yes, congratulations, you've won it. How would that affect your activities? How would you scale up? Would you have to scale up? in order to accept the job. If you need to, have a plan in place before you win the tender. Next one, it's a similar vein. Resources. They're things you might need. So one example I use is in construction. They quite often need a crane to lift heavy things from one place to another. You have to book it. It has to be available. It has to work. You have to know where it's going to come from. Is it something you own? Is it something that a third party supplies? So these are resources that typically are not in-house, but they can be. And especially if you have your own plant and machinery, does that need to be scaled up? Does it need to be serviced? What do you need to do to make sure that when you win the tender, you can honour your promise? Because your tender document or your sales transaction is a promise to deliver your benefits on a certain date at a certain price. So make sure you know all the resources that you will need. Could be people, could be vehicles, could be anything. What resources do you need? So again, similar questions. Do you have them in-house? If you outsource them, that's a really good idea. If it's people that you outsource, do you always get the same people? Oh, sorry about that. Can you rely on those people? Do you have a big pool of people just waiting for when you win a big tender? Are your people certified? How does it work? Okay. In partnerships, this is where you talk to the people, because you need the resource, the crane, whatever it is. That's the resource you need. Who's going to supply it? A key partner. If that crane is important to your business, you would have key partnerships. And you'd probably have more than one crane hire company that you can talk to. So think about who your primary supplier is and perhaps have a secondary supplier. And also in terms of partnerships, quite often you are allowed to collaborate to deliver goods for a tender. If you think about it at a massive level, think HS2. You know, companies join together to do things. They have tunnel boring companies who work with track laying companies because they have different expertises. But when you pull them together, you get a railway that goes through the side of a hill. So don't necessarily refuse a tender because you can't do it on your own. Think about having collaborators. Think about having key partnerships with people that you know and you trust. So a strategic alliance, that's the highest level. People say, we want to create a new business. We want to do something massive, and it becomes something new. Joint ventures tend to be when two companies said, yep, let's help each other. And there'll be some documentation so that each knows what the other one does and where the boundaries are. And again, it's kind of laid down in paper in agreements. And supply chain is a much simpler partnership. You buy things, you use things. Do you have a relationship with your suppliers? When the going gets tough, can you put that phone call in and say, I'm so sorry, I've run out of something. Can you get them for me really quickly? Or if you pay them promptly and on time, and you might want to go back to them and say, you know, can we work on payment terms because I always pay you promptly. Can I have a prompt payment discount? You know I'm good for it. So you can ensure that you become top player with your supplier, and what you need, they are happy to supply, because you're building a partnership or a relationship with your supply chain. And key partnerships are there for different reasons. Sometimes it's a good fit, as we said. I do this bit, you do that bit, together we build something fantastic. Sometimes it can be that the sum of the parts is greater than the individual. And sometimes it can just be sheer size. It might be that I can fill in gaps for you, you can fill in gaps for me. It's a bigger collaborative engine. So the person at the other end, and the council might feel happier that you can be relied on. It reduces risk and uncertainty. And as we've said before, if there's something specialist that needs bringing in, we can do it. So again, think, who are your key partners? You probably know who they are. Write them down. Have you actively built good relationships with them, or do you just kind of use them when you need them? And is that something you'd like to improve? And if you have something that's massively important to what you deliver, have you got backup suppliers? Do you have alternate suppliers? Some people put their orders out 80-20 rule. So they give 80% to their number one supplier, 20% to their number two. They want to keep the number two, in touch. They want to keep giving them regular orders, but they want to keep number one on their toes. And if number one fails for any reason, they can switch purchase orders to the number two supplier. So having these partnerships figured out in advance is really helpful. Just as we've said, what happens to you? Do you need extra resource? If you slap some great big orders on your suppliers, will they be delighted, or would they be embarrassed because they can't deliver quickly enough? Would they give you a better price than you're currently getting? Would it allow you to put a better price in the tender? Have the conversation. So we need to look at costs. And the really important thing is to look and make sure you've covered every single piece of your cost. Some business models work on a cost plus arrangement. So you know what it costs you, you add a certain percentage on, and that's your sale price. Some things operate on value. So typically in the service industries where people are qualified and they offer true value to the person who's doing the purchasing, that value is appreciated. And so it's not a cost plus. It's not, well, it only took me half an hour, so I just charge you 3 6pence. It's, you've had £500 worth of value. So think about where you sit. You're probably somewhere in between. And also something that's very often forgotten is fixed costs. People understand the cost of raw materials, they understand the costs of freelancers and getting people in, but they forget part of their salary as the boss, as the owner, needs to be covered. Overheads to the building needs to be covered, or the office, or the telephone, or the mobile phone, or whatever it is, those costs need to be covered. All the expenses that the company has need to be covered by the sales and some. So just have a look at it. Make sure you know what you're doing, because if you make profit on a deal, you're a happy supplier. If you found that you've messed up and there's almost no money in it for you, or worse, you're making a loss, you become a grumpy supplier and you won't get used again, even though you're cheaper. And in these inflationary times where costs might be going up on the 1st of April for things like electricity, you might find that, again, if it's a long-term contract from someone like the council and they say, we need you to tender for the supply of for the next year, get on to your suppliers and say, what do you think is going to happen to your costs? Can you give me a fixed price contract? that is for the same length of time as the council. And again, they might be delighted to do that and say, yes, if you need 1,000 widgets, we'll buy them in now at today's price. We will hold them in stock for you. That'll be fabulous. It's called run rate business for us. That'll be a fabulous piece of business for us. So it all feeds back into itself. And lastly, social and environmental. And this is a bit of a funny one because what we're actually saying is they will expect you to have some kind of social value. So on the one hand, you're selling to the council and you will also be affecting, or should be affecting, the lives of other people. So those are your impact customers. They don't give you any money, but you have an impact on their lives. If you're a bad company, you might be polluting the river. If you're a good company, you might say, give us this order and we will put in a playground, a kids' play area. Or you might say, we will fund somebody who's going to clean out the river, whatever it might be. So what is your ESG policy? And just as important, how does it compare to the policy of the people you are working with? Because you want them to resonate with you. You want them to understand that you understand their social values. So those things on the right-hand side, those social values are things that you can have policy for. So you have a policy on diversity of employment and inclusion of everybody, regardless of race, colour, creed, blah, blah, blah. So all of those things you need to be able to demonstrate, often through policies. And you need to be able to evidence what you're doing, because there's no point having what's commonly described as greenwash. We say we're jolly good. We say we put all our recycling in the correct bin. Really? Is that the best you can offer? Understand me, the person who's written the tender, understand what I expect, understands what my standards of ESG are, and show me that you will go some way towards meeting them and helping us have a better planet. Because that's the way people think these days. It cannot be ignored. So that's probably one that's perhaps a bit more difficult. Perhaps you need to take that away and do that as homework. So now, got a few minutes left, 8 minutes left. What we should be able to do is start summarizing. This is the business model canvas. And we said that you start off with customer segments and build value propositions. So the value proposition is defined by the user segments, and the customer segments equally define what goes into the value proposition. So that's kind of a two-way thing. They feed into each other. Then we need to understand what's our communication medium. Again, for a tender document, you understand what it is. It's a tender response. It's a piece of paper. But that in itself is very important, because you have to communicate through a pen. You don't see body language, and it might feel as if you've got one hand tied behind your back. So it's important that you understand how your channel works. We said we want to have relationships with the people we want to sell to. So see if you can do that, especially ahead of the sale, because people like to get to know you and trust you before the sale occurs, wherever that's possible. We need to know that the value proposition we have is worthwhile. We can make money at it. We need to know what is it that we have to do, our resources, our partners, our activities. We need all of this to fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. Because when we think it through, before we write our answers to the tender, we are so confident. You are so confident because you know where the answers have come from. It's a fantastically good place to be. So again, resources might feed into partners and so on. And when you put all of your feasibility stuff, you have your costs. You know what they are. You know they're all covered. And so you make profit. So pretty good, huh? And that's what we do in the one-to-one. So in a minute, if anyone who's interested in a one-to-one, write your name in the chat and I will come back to you. And we can start doing the one-to-ones tomorrow. And just a couple of case studies to finish with. This is a company that came to us and they sort of said, yeah, we do pallets. And that was kind of, really? How do you mean? Well, we do pallets. And when they went through the value proposition, it was, well, who do you do pallets for? Businesses that ship stuff. Okay, can you narrow that down? Manufacturing business. Okay, can you narrow that down? And they kept narrowing it down until they realized the niche they wanted to operate in. They also began to understand that as part of their key resources, they need fresh pallets. They need new ones. They realized that the resource they needed was space. They need a cheap piece of concrete to put these pallets on. You can see second photograph in, bulk purchase. You need, so I'm just trying to get my mouse to work. So down there, second photograph in, they need to be able to put loads of pallets on the ground, ready to move them out. And if they could deliver them too, so not just sell the pallet, but say, yes, sir, you can have 10, 20, 30, 50 now. We will bring them to you. By the way, there's a modest charge for that, but gets you out of a hole, doesn't it? And then, would you like some more next week? Can we get into scheduled deliveries? Can we get into repeat deliveries? Can we then work out a route that minimizes the use of the van, minimizes, it's not there and back the whole time. You have a circular route. So you can talk about reducing carbon footprint. So you can start talking about ESG. So all of a sudden, when you start thinking these things through, you think this is a whole lot more than just we do pallets. Some pallets are broken. And that's quite a problem for people to get rid of, because normally the response is, no, we don't take broken ones. But how about you do take broken ones, and what can you do with them? Can you get 2 broken ones and turn them into 1? Maybe. If they're really smashed up, can you turn them into kindling and sell them for people who need kindling to start a fire in their wood burner? Well, that's an interesting idea. So by thinking about the different segments, thinking about what you have to offer, business suddenly becomes diversified and it goes in different places. And so you can see they recycle them. And I told them a story about my daughter, actually. She had a tree house built by me. And guess what it's made of? Old pallets. And they said, wow, so we can sell to the people who want to build tree houses. And they're thinking, oh, that's probably a bit niche. And then somebody came up with this funky idea that you can have very robust furniture. It's of a certain type and style, but it's very robust and it can be massively cheap. And so again, as you can see on the right-hand side, that's something they do. Buy a nice cushion, stick it on some painted pallets, you have a sofa. Interesting. So by going through what they have and who they could sell to, thinking outside the box, they did really well. This second one, this is a lady who runs a cleaning company, and she was always booked by the FM company. FM is facilities management. So if you've got an office block or whatever, they need a cleaner, they'll send a tender out and say, can you clean this office block? Blah, 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 blah. And she would very often win the work. And she was getting more and more frustrated because the FM company was doing a bad job. And so the people that owned the office block would say, don't need you anymore. We're going to get another FM company in. So she would try and find out who they are. Do they already have their own cleaners? Mr. Office Man, can you please put in a good work for us? Because you like what we do, don't you? You think we do a good job of cleaning your offices. Oh, yes. And she said, I want to go direct, but I'm scared. I've never done it before. I've never responded to a tender. So we took her through. She could easily tell us what her fantastically good points was. And one of her huge benefits was, I can do it for less than the FM company charge you. That's interesting. Get the same job done for less. And in these times, that's fantastic. So she had fantastic benefits she could offer. And now, as you can see, she goes direct. She's happy as you like. And she's happy to also work for the FM companies. But very often now, she is cleaner of choice for the office blocks around Hillingdon. So that's just 2 people that have been on Fit to Bid and where it's got them. So now Sorry, I'm about to run over, for which I apologise. On your next piece of paper, I want you to write down some actions. What is it you're going to take away from today? And I hope the first one will be book a one-to-one with me. Second one, have a think about everything we've spoken about and see if you can improve business model canvas before the one-to-one. And if you want to try one for a different segment and see how that works, that might be another good idea. So we've gone through the tool. We've said how you can create value, how you can show other people what that value is, and by modifying your language so that you talk in terms of benefits, not what you do, it's the benefit doing that has for your customer, you can build a business model canvas for any segment of your choice. And we've said you start here and you bob around and you keep improving it. It's an iterative process. So we're now there on March the 2nd. You can see there's another session, another webinar on the 16th, same time, 11 till 12. There's another one about how do we develop the key partnerships we've spoken about today? How do we keep all this money running around Hillingdon so that Hillingdon becomes a thriving borough? And how do we benefit from that circulating money? And as of now, the one-to-ones are available with myself and Elsa. So all we need you to do is, well, yeah, that's a form. We fill it in. The one-to-one is direct. It is, as it says on the tin, it's one-to-one. There's no other audience. We share a lot of confidential information with you and help you design a great tender response. So you've already done the top bit. I'd like you to do the next bit, because that means you can submit an expression of interest. So you can go to the council or someone else and say, hey, look at me. Look at how good I am. Can I be on your approved supplier list, please? And you've started building a relationship. They know who you are. And then when the time comes round, you can develop a winning bid. So thank you very much. My apologies for running over. Okay. So just check if there's any other questions or anything in the chat, or if you'd like to put something in there now, that would be good. Be happy to take any questions. Right. Thank you, Elsa. That's a lovely comment. Thank you, Monique, saying you're going to have a go. You're going to focus on completing your template. What I would say is when you've had a go, definitely book a one-to-one. And I know that my diary is fairly full. So if you're thinking about having a one-to-one in a week's time or so, maybe I can get back to you afterwards, if that's okay. Brilliant. Okay. Well, I'll wait a moment longer. I can stop the share. Thank you very much. Oh, even better, Monique. Thank you. Thank you that you're booked on the next session. That's really good. So, Lisa, if you're there, I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to add before we finish the session.
No, just thank you everyone for coming.
That's lovely. So, yes, thank you, everybody. I've enjoyed doing this. I hope you have too, and I look forward to having a one-to-one with you very soon. Thank you very much.